Stop being afraid. I think so much of we have dreams. There are things we want to do. We have these goals and these visions of our future, and the thing that stops us is the fear. And it's shocking to me to talk to lawyers and to see that fear in their eyes, because these are the same people, the gladiators, who will go into a courtroom or go into some sort of room and do so well advocating on behalf of their client. But when it comes to their own lives, they let the fear hold them back.
This is the Art of Lawyering podcast, a show all about making more money, being a badass attorney, and loving your life. The Art of Lawyering is all about becoming the best you possible. Whether you are a law firm owner, an associate attorney, or somewhere in between, this podcast is built to help you get the most out of life.
Hello and welcome once again to episode number 11 of the Art of Lawyering podcast. As always, I'm your host, Christopher Small, and I'm excited to introduce and tell you about today's guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is. I'm going to keep it a secret, but I can tell you this. He has owned a law firm for 25 plus years. They work remotely. They do family law, and this guest is awesome. There's a ton of great insight in this interview. This is probably one of the best interviews that I've had in a long time. Just the wisdom that this guest had and the insight was just fantastic. So I want to really encourage you to get in there, listen to the whole thing. We jump around a little bit to a couple different topics just kind of as they organically come up. And this is one that you do not want to miss. With that being said, I wanted to always remind you of the I guess we should announce this week's book winner. This week's book winner is Ugo. Okay, so Ugo is the proud winner of StrengthsFinder 2.0. The next week's book is going to be Built to Sell by John Warlow. Another great book. So if you want to get on the list to win the book, all you have to do is go to iTunes, subscribe, leave me a review, then go to theartoflawyering.com/giveaway and sign up. Let me know that you've done that stuff and you'll be on the list. So we're giving away a book every week. These are great books that I've read and have used to build up my practice, and they'll be good for you too. So the other thing I want to mention is, again, I want to remind everyone about Law Firm Confidential. Right, this is my membership site. Got a bunch of great courses in there. We have a new course coming out next month on AdWords and how to use AdWords to build up your practice. And this is very relevant. We talk about AdWords in this interview as a way to really jumpstart your practice and start hot right out of the gates. So if you want to sign up for that, you can, or check it out even. If you just want to see what it's all about, just go to lawfirmconfidential.net, and there's a whole bunch of information about the site, the course, what it is, how you sign up. It's only $1 for the first month, so there's no reason not to go check it out and sign up. So without further ado, let's get to this week's show. Here we go. Our guest today has practiced family law for more than 25 years with 4 offices. His firm serves Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, and Cary, North Carolina. He served as law practice management editor of the ABA Family Advocate for more than a decade and received the ABA James Keene Award for Excellence in E-Lawyering. He's also served as the chair of law practice management section of the North Carolina Bar Association, is a frequent speaker, and is often sought out by the media as a source of family law insight and commentary. In addition to that, he also has a really cool blog called Divorce Discourse that is a lot like the Art of Lawyering, in that it sort of analyzes and checks out, goes through issues related to starting, managing, and running a successful law firm. Talks about things like networking, leadership, management, all those things. And I'm really excited to have our guest on today. Welcome to the show, Mr. Lee Rosen.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
Great. So, I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but that's just sort of, in a way, where you're at now. I'd love to just have you tell everybody maybe a little bit more about who you are and what I didn't get from the intro.
Well, I thought you did a pretty good job. The thing that isn't in my introduction and that's going on with me and that is a fairly big deal is that about 4 years ago, I went to the people in my firm and I said, hey, if you don't want to come to the office anymore, you don't have to. You can work from home. And slowly, over about a year or 18 months, everybody took me up on that opportunity and stopped coming in. Now, some of them just went and worked from home. Some of them moved around the world. We've got one guy in Sofia, Bulgaria. We have a managing attorney who is in Charleston, South Carolina, but they let the wind carry them. And I have followed their lead, and I am living out of a carry-on bag, bopping around. Just got back from 2 weeks on Bonaire. I'm living on South Beach right now down in Miami. And we have become very much a law firm that allows people to work remotely, and people can do their jobs without having to go into the office.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun.
Is amazing. And we're going to talk about that more. I didn't know about that until you just said that. So we got a couple of things to talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. And it's interesting that you didn't know, because that is the reality today with the technology. Most of our clients don't pay any attention to that either, and they have no idea. So it's very doable in this world we're living in right now.
Right. I want to talk about some of those logistics soon. But, I also, what I really like to do when I have people come on is kind of take us back to the beginning, to the time when you started your firm. What did you start right out of law school? What was that sort of
I went to work
like?
as an associate for a law firm for 3 years. And then one day, 3 years into it, I found myself having a sort of out-of-body experience where I was watching myself quit my job. And it was prompted by a discussion about some CLE reimbursement and who was going to pay for what. And I got annoyed, as lawyers will do, and literally without a plan in place, I can see it right now in my mind. I just watched myself resign right there, and that day I was done. I headed out and started my own firm.
Great. Okay, that's. Had you done anything sort of entrepreneurial before that time?
Yeah. I was sort of an entrepreneurial, kid. I mean, I used to grow radishes in my backyard and sell them to the neighbors. And I was one of those kids that had paper routes and sold holiday cards out of a catalog from the back of a comic book. So, I mean, I wasn't somebody who was, I liked the idea of selling stuff and doing that sort of thing on my own. I wasn't foreign to that idea, but it wasn't exactly what I planned for that moment.
Right. And did you go straight into family law practice? Is that what you did when you started, or did you? The
firm I started with did rural electric cooperative law. And I helped with that a little bit, which was, nothing. I'm sure there are some people out there that think that's a lot of fun, but that was some boring stuff.
Right.
And I found an opportunity to do some family law cases that would get me into court right away. And I thought that was really neat to be able to go into court. And it also got me out from under the supervision of the partners in the firm, because they weren't interested in family law. They were doing this rural electric stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw that crack in a door to get a few of those cases, and it really was started off almost as favors to people, I jumped in and ran with it because it just looked like fun to me.
Okay. And then when you opened like we talked a little bit about sort of before we technically got into the interview, a lot of people that listen to this show are either starting out or sort of struggling with their firm, looking for help, solutions. So what was, tell me about like your first maybe 4 or 5 years of practice, and what was that like, and how did you get it ramped up? What'd you do to sort of get to where you are? How did you set that foundation, I guess?
Well, the stuff that I did, and it really works just as well now as it did then, is that I went out and I did two things. I built relationships. I took a lot of people to lunch. Back then, we didn't have the coffee shops that we have today. That wasn't a thing that many years ago. But I took people to lunch, or I'd go drop in on their offices and get to know them, and I built relationships. And what I found very quickly was that if I could find 10 or 20 or 30 people who would refer business to me on a regular basis, I'd be fine. And the other thing I did simultaneously is I hooked up with a group called the Women's Center in Raleigh and volunteered to do workshops for for the women who were their customers, basically, of this women's center, to teach them about family law. And I started doing that once or twice a month and did that for about 20 years, literally several times a month, year after year after year. And we do it, we expanded it into every city that we have gone into. Right. But very much relationships, along with being out there in the community teaching these seminars, that worked. And I went back in the last couple of years and applied math to those relationships. And I figured out that if I had 20 relationships, and those folks would refer to me every other month, 6 times a year, and my average fee exceeds $10,000 a case, that's $1 million from those 20 relationships.
Right.
And I've done some coaching over the last couple of years where I'll sit down with a young lawyer and we will go out and identify who those 20 people ought to be. We'll get to work on it. We can't always build a relationship with all 20, but we'll build a relationship with some of them, and then we'll go find some new people until we get it done. And within 24 months, 36 months, worst case, if this lawyer is committed to doing it, we're now seeing the $1 million a year in revenues from those relationships. It's not magic. It's just that some lawyers will do it and some lawyers won't.
Right. And so I want to dive just a little bit deeper on that, on sort of the relationship building. One of the questions that I get from people a lot, a question that actually we talk about a lot I have a membership group. It's called Law Firm Confidential, and we have a Facebook group. A lot of things that people often talk about and try to get their hands wrapped around is, how do I create those referral relationships or those business relationships if I don't have a lot of business to refer?
It's not about referring business. Yeah, that's just a screwed up way to look at it.
Right. My question though is, when you went in to form these relationships and when you teach people to do it now, is there a process that you recommend that people go through, or is there a sort of a mindset? What is it?
Yeah, there's a mindset. I think that's a perfect description of it. It's about becoming friends with the person. So it's a little mercenary. You target people that can refer.
Sure.
And then you become friends with them and you maintain those relationships. And so I advocate a very systematic approach of, staying in touch every month with a, email or a phone call, and then making sure you go to lunch once every 3 months. But that's just to get it started. Where you want to end up, and where I have ended up, is you want to be booking the 2-week trip to Italy with their family and your family traveling together, or you want to be arranging the play dates or the beach trips or the dinners for the whatever it is. These are friends. These are 20 people that are a big part of your life going forward for, say, the next 35 years.
Right.
And if you have that mindset about building those relationships, then it can't ever be about, oh, I sent you a case, you send me a case, and it can't be about paying referral fees and all that. It really is about the connection.
Right. And I'm really happy that you sort of broke down the math, because that's one of the things that I try to do for people too. And when you do that, you realize that it takes a lot of work, but it doesn't take a lot of broad work, if that makes sense. You really can just focus on creating relationships with a few key people, and that can fund your firm forever, potentially.
That's right. It absolutely does. And you've nailed it. Once you build those relationships, all you got to do is maintain them, and it doesn't take a lot of time, because these are now your friends, and everybody wants to hang out with their friends. So it isn't even like you're setting aside business time. It's just, your spouse and their spouse are doing something. The two of you join in. One thing leads to another. Everybody knows each other, and the relationship continues.
Right. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so another thing. So if you, my next. And I like to just go kind of through the progression of your practice. And because you have been around for 25 years, you have gone through sort of the non-internet age through to where we are today. How did you transition to adopting? Because
I don't know you personally. We just met literally a couple, 20 minutes ago, but I can tell from looking at your website and from talking to you, obviously, that you are sort of up to speed on what's going on with technology today. I mean, you don't even have anybody in your office, right? So how did you, have you always been interested in technology, or how did you adopt that and integrate that into your life and I guess into your practice as well?
Well, I'm a big believer in the idea that the guy, and it's usually guys, who dies with the most gadgets wins.
Okay.
And so I've always had a bug for, buying things and playing with toys and all of that. So that has never been something that for me has been a chore. I could buy more gadgets than, you know what I'm saying. It's like I'm on the web. Amazon, they know me very well. And so that has always been fun and interesting to me. And so we went paperless 20 years ago because we could buy cool worm drives and jukeboxes. And, we adopted a practice management system. We used Lotus Notes in the early 90s. We built a website in 1994. That's just been fun to me. And I hear you. If it's not fun to somebody, it's a real chore.
Mm-hmm.
But, I couldn't wait to move our phone system to the cloud and, to get rid of all the servers. And that to me is just as much a hobby as anything. And so I feel badly for someone that doesn't find that entertaining, because having somebody at the top who is into the technology sure makes it easier for your law firm. But today, with this consumerization of technology, even if you're not a geek, they've made a lot of tech fun. There really is if you buy these pretty iPhones and MacBooks and go out and buy Clio or whatever, these are nice, fun, shiny objects. And so I think even somebody that doesn't automatically gravitate in that direction still thinks it's a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's kind of a good segue into talking a little bit about how you transitioned to essentially no office space, right? You probably have an office somewhere, but to everyone sort of working wherever they want. How did you do that?
Well, it really is simpler than it sounds. We just gave up the space and we leased conference rooms. So, for example, in our Raleigh office, we have a space with nothing but a lobby, a office for the receptionist. She is the one person in the firm that shows up. And then 7 conference rooms surrounding a little cafe area where people can do self-service drinks. And so a client, comes into our office, comes through the lobby, is greeted by the receptionist, is taken to a conference room. They never are exposed to where the lawyer is when they're not in that conference room. And the reality is those lawyers are wherever they want to be. And so more than anything, making this transition is kind of about announcing it and managing the change, helping people to see the upside, to not having to get stuck in traffic, or to being able to go work on an island off the coast of Venezuela, or whatever it may be for them. But it's really, from a technology standpoint, a monkey could do it. Everything is in the cloud today. We have no servers. We have no cables anymore. Right. And I remember when we used to rent office space, we'd have to pull cables, 3 or 4 cables at $150 a piece to every location, every desk in the office. And now it's all wireless and the servers are somewhere in the cloud. So it couldn't be any simpler. We got rid of telephones and printers, and everybody has a laptop and a headset, and they're in business.
So I have some legit. I'm going to get a little nuts and bolts with you, because I know that people listening are like, okay, wait, that sounds great, but what? So when someone calls the office, do you guys do mostly phone conferences for like potential clients, or?
Potential clients almost exclusively meet with a lawyer in a conference room in one of the cities that we serve.
Okay.
So we do phone, we do Skype, but the reality is that most potential clients want to meet with a lawyer in person.
Right. And then do you sort of try to batch those appointments so that someone, one of the lawyers that works for you knows, like, I need to be in the office from 10 to 2 on Tuesday for potential client meetings? Or
yeah,
you'd hate to have it, you'd hate to have it where you have one at 9 and you have one at 2, and then you have, because then you end up being in the office all day, essentially.
Right. Now, and I will tell you, part of the solution for us to that dilemma is that we don't have all of our attorneys doing initial consults. We very much have, we keep stats, careful stats on who is good at doing consults. And so you don't get to bat unless you're a good hitter. And so we have a limited number of lawyers that do consults, and they'll go into the office and do 5, 6, up to 10 in a crazy day. And yes, they absolutely designate days that they want to be in the office, and then our client liaisons stack those appointments up on those days.
Okay, I love that. That's awesome, and I love that. Cool. Did you make this quote up? You don't get to bat unless you're a good hitter. I love that. I'm writing it down right now. That's going to be...
Well, it doesn't make sense to take your worst players and put them up. If they can't hit it, you just don't. There's no reason for the client's not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy. Everybody loses in that scenario.
Right.
So, it's like you don't send people that aren't good at litigation to court. Same thing.
That's right. And I can tell you from firsthand experience how that's happened to us. We had someone that we would, funnel some potential client meetings to, and then they stopped doing them, and we started doing them, and we were like, holy smokes, we are making so much more money because people are signing up, actually, that are coming in, So it's I couldn't agree with you more about that.
And it all starts with the data. You keep the data, then you know how to play. Yep.
Right. Okay. All right. And then, so then you have it all pretty much. I mean, that's the biggest logistical hurdle that I could see. I mean, some of your lawyers are obviously going to have to live in the cities where you're practicing because they're going to have to go to court and do things like that. But
absolutely. But even those lawyers can say, hey, I'd like to spend a month in Barcelona.
Right.
And boom, they just mark it off their schedule and they're gone. And they can keep working every day from Barcelona.
Right. Yeah, because there's not, I don't know much anything about how family law works in North Carolina, but I would assume that there aren't a lot of depositions or things like that. It's
like anything else there. If you manage your schedule proactively, you can be where you need to be at the right time, and you can force things into your schedule in the right way. But all of our lawyers who spend a lot of time out of town work with other lawyers in the firm to back one another up and make sure that they don't run into an emergency.
Right, and that's what I was just was asked too. Is I think probably my last question. But do you adopt a team approach for your cases, or do you have someone that's assigned to a specific client? What's that logistical?
We assign a particular lawyer to each client. We have somebody who is primarily responsible. And the reality is that that's sort of a byproduct of our compensation system and our fixed fees. Everything we do is on fixed fees. And so we very much have one lawyer assigned to each case. But that lawyer, for instance, in a situation where they want to be out of town, may well make some sort of side arrangement with another lawyer if they're going to have them help them out in some way. There's a lot of that goes on.
Right. Okay, and that's interesting too. Fixed. Every topic that we get on just brings up more and more things I want to talk to you about. And you're like my favorite attorney of all time because you prescribe to sort of the same thought process that I do. And what that really means is just sort of rethinking how you deliver legal services and not just rely on the way that it's always been done, particularly when that doesn't work.
Right. And that, I agree with you completely. And the idea that we do things exactly the same as everyone else is it's at the root of the problem that a lot of lawyers have with growing their practices because they are uncomfortable standing out. They have this sort of conformist gene, and unless you're willing to be different, you're going to get the same results that everybody else is getting. And if you read any of the popular media about lawyers today, it's on average, lawyers are not doing very well. Right. And so the only way you're going to do well is if you're willing to stand out from the pack in one way or another.
Yeah, what I always tell people is, what I try to do is look at what everyone else is doing and then find some other way to do it.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And a good example of that people can look at and copy if it helps them is our website, the family law website, rosen.com. I talk to lawyers all day long who feel great if their website has 100 visitors a day. If I had less than 5,000 visitors a day, I'd want to slit my wrists. I mean, we built a site there that is the leading resource in our jurisdiction. And so people flock to that site. And of course, when you have thousands of people showing up at your website, many, many of them are going to become your clients.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about this fixed fees thing here for just really quickly. How do you, and what I'd like to do is just think about all the people that are listening and all the ways that they're freaking out and all the questions that they're asking, and then figure out sort of how you overcame some of those perceived hurdles. And the biggest one is, with divorce, well, what happens if something goes crazy, right? And they want to have some sort of additional litigation, I guess, that you didn't foresee at the beginning. How do you take care of that?
We have people sign a client agreement for the portion of the case that does not involve litigation. And if the case turns into litigation, we have them sign a new client agreement that sets forth the fees for litigation. So we very much define the problem we will solve when they hire us. Now, some people walk in the door and there is already litigation, so they start off with a client agreement that addresses litigation. But that's something we discuss at the outset.
And how do clients approach the way that you approach these fees? Are they okay with them or not?
Most clients love it. I mean, most clients hate hourly billing. It creates a tremendous amount of anxiety. I'm not going to tell you 100% of our clients love anything you do. There's going to be somebody that doesn't like it. That's actually, I think, a good thing. But our clients mostly appreciate that we're taking the risk and that they don't have to. So once they've paid their fee, they know, well, it's done. If it goes in one direction or another that they didn't anticipate, it's not their problem, it's our problem. So they very much appreciate the shifting of the risk. And, my gut reaction to all that is that it only makes sense for us to take the risk because we're the experts. For them to take the risk seems crazy because they have no ability to judge the risk.
Right. And the other thing too is, I think that a lot of times we all like to think that what we do is so requires such a high level of expertise that we don't see sort of the rote things that happen with every case and the ability to forecast how long that's going to take and start to get paid on value versus strapping yourself to the desk and making yourself pump out work that either you've already done before or that's not necessary just because you're billing hourly.
Exactly. And you'll hear a lawyer. Lawyers will say, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, if you don't know what's going to happen, maybe you shouldn't be handling this kind of case because you're supposed to know what's going to happen. That's your job. That's your business.
Right. I mean, there are certainly sort of those random issues that pop up. But if you've been practicing for 25 years, I mean, there's probably not – I would say, well, I'm going to guess. You can tell me no if I'm wrong, but probably 90% of the divorces that you do, for example, are probably flow along the same kind of a pattern.
Absolutely. And this idea that there is something random that will happen is entirely predictable. You are correct. Something random will happen. It will be one of these 20 things, and it will happen in this percentage of your files. Right. Well, now it's not random.
Right. And what I tell people too is, when you bill based on value, you sort of have built in for those random occurrences anyway, because if you have 90% of your cases that flow very smoothly and you know what are going on, then the other 10% are sort of just worked into the other 90.
Right.
If that makes sense. You may spend a ton of time on one case, but there are 10 other cases that just go the way that they're supposed to go, and you don't have to spend a ton of time on them, you know? All right, that's cool. And what the way you do it too, that's what allows everybody to work from wherever they want and experience life. That's what I love the idea of fixed fees because it unchains you from your desk. It really allows you to do what you're supposed to be doing, which is providing your knowledge and expertise to your clients in a way that helps them solve their problems.
Right. And we could spend hours on the benefits of fixed fees over hourly billing. I mean, it makes the work a lot more fun than it would otherwise be.
Right. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Okay. Well, we're not going to spend hours on fixed fees because we have a bunch of other cool stuff that we need to talk about. One of the things that we sort of talked about before we started recording, and that I promised that I would talk about, is the start your firm slowly or jumpstart it really quickly. And I can't remember. I think I said something about, a lot of people here are sort of starting out, and you mentioned that there are a couple different ways you can do it. The slow, steady way and the jumpstart, hit it fast way.
Yeah, and I feel like most lawyers do it the incredibly slow, steady way. They're very reluctant to engage in the marketing to grow the firm. And so things move at a very slow pace. And if you look at the years of a career, you see lawyers that they really do just sort of go up incrementally each year over 30 or 40 years. And then you see other law firms that, go from 1 or 2 lawyers to 30 lawyers and revenues of, 0 to 20 million overnight. And so you don't have to be in one of those, you don't have to do that slow and steady thing, but you cannot jumpstart it if you're going to be a conformist. You've got to be willing to step out and take some element of this thing and do it differently.
So let's talk about maybe let's say for some reason everything got wiped out for you, and you had to start over. Obviously, what you know now, but let's assume you don't have any clients, or you don't have a list that you can, tap into right away. What would you do? Where would you start?
Well, I would start doing the relationship thing, but I would recognize that that's going to take a while. That's not something that's going to happen in the first month. If I wanted to really jumpstart things and make revenues come right now, I do it with pay-per-click advertising. We do some of it, not a huge amount of it, but we can get 20x returns on pay-per-click advertising overnight. So we can spend $5,000 this month and see $100,000 in revenues as a result of it. And that's a good, I think, a solid return on investment. And I'd be doing it using the latest technology. I would not simply be doing what so many lawyers do, which is to run kind of a dumb ad that says, Raleigh divorce lawyer. I'd be doing ads that think through where the prospect is coming through, what mindset they're in, what decisions they're making based on what just happened in their lives. And I would be testing like crazy. I'd be using autoresponder sequences where I'd have those people coming to a landing page and signing up for the sequence. And then I'd be remarketing like crazy to those people using a sequenced progression of remarketing advertisements where I'm moving them along the purchase decision. And with the data today, with things like Facebook and lookalike audiences, your ability to buy lists from data.com and pump them into Facebook and other social media outlets, you can incredibly quickly turn a little bit of money into a lot of revenue. Now, obviously, you've got to be equipped to deal with that revenue and manage those files. But if I were in the situation you just described, and I needed a quick turnaround, that's where I'd be spending my time and money.
Yeah, well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because I got to plug myself here real quick. But I mentioned that I have the membership site lawfirmconfidential.net is where you can find it, and I do a new sort of course every quarter, and the course that's coming up to be released in April is about AdWords, because I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that it's something that people get a little nervous about, or a little scared even, because they hear people like you start dropping words like retargeting and lookalike audiences, and it can be a little intimidating. But I think, and I want to know if you agree with me or not, that learning about Google AdWords and things like that is not that difficult if you just take a little bit of time to figure it out.
It's not difficult, and you ought to learn about it. You shouldn't do it. There are people that are expert at this that ought to do it for you. It is amazingly fast changing.
Right.
And doing it yourself, if the numbers are even remotely substantial, and I mean, I've got a buddy that's spending $25,000 a month on AdWords.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing you want is you can lose a lot of money in a hurry, but you need to understand it so you can talk to the experts that are helping you with it.
And I know from you have the best kind of expert, right? Because your son, I think, has an AdWords business, right?
He is in Bangkok, and all he does is manage AdWords for lawyers around the globe. And I know from our experience, we used to try and do this stuff ourselves, and then we grew our own expert, homegrown expert. And seeing the return on investment that someone like him can get is just so much more impressive than anything we could do. And it's just it is as complicated or more complicated than practicing law, and you can't afford to spend too much of your time on this.
So, well, first of all, why don't we give him a plug? If people are interested, right? Is he taking on more clients right now, or is there a list they can sign up for?
Sometimes he takes people, and sometimes he doesn't. He's at rosenadvertising.com.
All right.
And he is, as you can imagine, there are so many lawyers that want to spend money on this stuff that
right.
he will do. Occasionally, I know he takes new clients, but I don't know what his story is at the moment. He's a moving target.
Right. Well, and the only reason I wanted you to do that is because there are so many companies out there that promise the world and then don't deliver when it comes to this stuff, that if you can find a reliable resource or a reliable source for help with this kind of stuff, I want to get that out there. Because
and you ought to, if you try anybody on this, if you don't see results in the first couple of weeks, certainly 60 days, it's not working.
Right.
Because this is not a slow kind of build up your brand kind of thing. This is you run the ad, they click on it, you better see some revenues coming from that click.
Right, and that's the cool thing about AdWords, and that's why you said you can use it to jumpstart, because what is different about AdWords as opposed to putting up a billboard or even doing networking is that you are putting yourself in front of people that are specifically looking for your services right now.
Right, really, really high purchase intent. They're going to buy something from somebody.
Right, I mean, if somebody is searching for Raleigh divorce attorney even, there is something typically going on there, right? I mean, in some way. I guess, that's weird. That's the thing, though, about your practice area, I guess. That's a little bit different from what I do, which is we do DUI defense, personal injury, things like that. But when people are looking for us, typically they need us now. I guess you guys, and that's why retargeting and everything is so important for you guys, because, you may have people that are just thinking about, okay, this relationship is going downhill. What do I do now to sort of get ready, maybe, right? Is that?
Yeah, I would agree with the distinction, although I know somebody using AdWords, pay-per-click ads for personal injury, and it's working for them. So, it's hard to know.
I guess the only thing I was saying was, even for you, though, you may see a little bit of a lag with some of the people that...
We'll see 10 years of
right.
lag. Yeah,
right.
Unbelievable.
As opposed with us, the people that are looking for us, they need us now.
Right.
Most people don't go looking for a DUI lawyer unless they have a court date. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it can work with both, and you'll get people, I'm sure that have maybe their spouse has dropped, divorce papers on them or something, and they need someone to help them out.
They're in a hurry, yeah.
Right.
But here's the bottom line with all of that is you don't ever spend a lot of money on any of these things. You spend a little money and you test.
Right.
And you don't assume that your test was, you do little tests. So you might try a particular ad to a particular target group, and you might say, well, that didn't work, but let's try it a little differently, and let's see. So there's a lot of experimentation, and you don't know until you know.
Definitely. And so when it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to jump starting, what kind of money would you... guys, I'm thinking about people that are on a shoestring kind of a budget. What's the amount of money that you would recommend that people go with if they're just starting out and need to get? Could they get in it with $500 or need $1,000?
The prices of these ads has become so high lately. It is tough to get in with a small amount of money, but it really depends on the market. In some markets, there's not much bidding on the ads at all. And then in other markets, and a good example of this, I have a friend in Phoenix where the prices are just incredibly high. So it just varies market by market. But yeah, if you said, if you say I want to experiment with AdWords and I want to spend $500 or $1,000 and just see where I end up, you'll have some evidence for whether you're on the right track or not. But you probably are not going to feel like you really know how that went. You could get incredibly lucky and you could have 3 people come in and they all hire you and pay you $10,000 each, but you could also end up with no one calling you. It could be the luck of the draw on a small number.
Right. And the key really, though, too, is if you're going to do something like that, you have to commit to pumping some of that money back in to increase your budget and continue to test, continue to find the markets that work for you.
Yep, exactly.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's great. What do you have anything else for the jump starting way, or is AdWords the way that you'd focus on?
That's what I do today.
Yeah.
If I wanted quick return on investment, the reality is advertising is always faster than everything else. And the only advertising that I would even consider today is pay-per-click ads. It's just so measurable. It's so easy. Everything else feels more like brand advertising. This is instant response. It's where you'd want to go.
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. All right, so I want to sort of switch gears again. And one of the things that I always like to hear about from people is sort of a time when you faced some kind of a challenge with your firm, whether it was maybe a cash flow problem or you had like a bad crop of employees working for you, or you messed something up, and I want to hear about that, and then I want to hear sort of about how you were able to overcome that challenge and get through it.
It's a good question, and I could go on and on about personal challenges. I mean, I have 2 kids, and we just mentioned Toby, the one that's doing the AdWords. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's raised kids knows that is just a freaking nightmare.
I have two myself.
Yeah, so it doesn't get any better or easier.
Right.
It's just endless. But from a business standpoint, the thing that I probably have struggled with the most, and to this day I still find it difficult, is this idea that I'm the boss, that I'm not the buddy. And I like to talk with the people that work for me. I feel a strong connection. I like to just BS with the guys that I'm talking to. And it's really hard for me to keep at the forefront of my mind this idea that I have this sign on my head that says I can fire you, and that fundamentally changes the relationship. And so I feel like over and over the time that I've been doing this, that I've gotten into relationships with employees where it wasn't. I wanted to be friends, and if that wasn't going to happen in the same way that it does with somebody that doesn't work for you. And so that has repeatedly led me into, just difficult personal situations where I'm disappointed with the way it's gone. They're not happy with the way it's gone. And I think it's really, especially in a small business, it's really hard to get clarity about your role as the boss, and that you are in charge, and that you're not really the friend, no matter how much you might like that to be, and how it sometimes feels that way. It's tough.
Right.
But it, it's one of those things that I would say you work it out over time. But depending on your personality, if you're like me, it never stops being a bit of a struggle.
Right. And this isn't along the same lines exactly, but with your remote practice, with the way that it's set up, how do you sort of keep track of people and what's going on? How do you make sure that people are sort of working within your philosophies and things like that? How do you keep everybody, working in the way that you want?
Yeah, what you really want to know is, how do you keep your team in alignment toward the goal of the business? What we do is we have a systematic process of management. We follow some basic principles of management, things like daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly meetings. We have goals for the business that we're working toward. We have one-to-ones with every employee and their manager every week. We have case status meetings between the managing attorney and all of the attorneys individually once a week. And so we have a system. We have a structure. It's well documented. It's followed. Everybody's evaluated based on their adherence to the structure. And then, and this is important, we have a compensation system that is linked to performance. We're not in the business of paying, salaries. We have compensation that is totally connected to performance at almost every level.
What is that? I don't want to know the numbers, but what does that mean?
Well, an example is an attorney will be paid a percentage for originating the file,
right,
and a different percentage to the attorney that actually produced the work. And so, they're getting straight up commissions on those files. And we have different systems for different roles in the firm, but those are the roles that most attorneys are thinking about most frequently: origination and production.
And then do you ever have any bickering between the home, I mean, not even the home run hitter, but just the setup guy, the guy that does the initial consultations, and the guy that does the actual work, or are people actually probably maybe more comfortable with those roles because it's actually where they fit?
Well, I think they're comfortable in the role, and we'll give anybody a shot at anything they want to do. So if somebody feels like, hey, they would be good at doing initial consultations, we would love for them to be good at doing initial consultations. Right. And we'll give anybody a shot at anything they think they can excel at. Sometimes the reality is that they're wrong.
Right, right.
But we don't tell people, no, you can't do that. This is reserved for somebody else. We only tell them, no, you can't do it if the numbers don't support the argument that they should be doing it.
Right. Okay, that's great. I could literally talk to you forever. Because this is like the stuff that I think about and love to talk about all the time. So I'm so happy we got to speak together. So I do have these. So I'm going to start to wrap it up a little bit. We're at about the 45-minute mark or so, and I know you have other things to do. I do like to ask sort of some what I call them lightning round questions, but they're kind of the same questions I ask to everyone because I think they are important enough to be asked that way. So are you ready for the lightning round questions?
Let's do it.
All right. Do you have a morning routine?
Yeah. I get up usually about 6 in the morning, get dressed, eat a quick breakfast, and write. I write for Divorce Discourse every morning. And if I get my one thing written for that blog, then I feel pretty good about whatever else gets done the rest of the day. So that's my highest priority. And after that, other people in the firm are starting to come online, and I'll get distracted and pulled into one thing or another. But that's my morning routine. I just want to get that one thing written.
Right. And do you have people, what about the content for your practice, for your law firm, your blog or the content you create?
For Rosen.com, we have a team of people that work on that site all the time.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't produce content for it, but we have lawyers that do.
Right. Okay, great. What's the best advice you've ever received?
There's a quote that I'm not sure who said it, but it's that people may not remember exactly what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And that has taken me a long time to internalize, and I'm not sure I'm there yet. I have a real temptation to want to be the smartest guy in the room and to win every argument and, to add something to whatever anybody else says. And that doesn't make anybody feel good. And so, I like to think, oh, look at how I helped everybody out by being so right here and adding so much value. And I should have just stopped talking and thought more about how they felt and gone with that, because that's what they're going to remember.
Right, right. What is something that's working for you right now?
The traveling is working for me. I love being on the road. I'm shockingly productive on airplanes, and when I get to somewhere new, it's really stimulating, gives me a lot of new ideas, and I really love this idea of being somewhere new a lot of the time. That just helps. It definitely is working for me.
Right. And actually, this is a perfect time to sort of break in and plug you a little bit. I saw that you do workshops, right, for through Divorce Discourse.
Yeah, once in a while. They're only in places that I'm going to visit anyway, and they sell out almost immediately, so they're a little hard to get into. But we have one with seats right now in London in September. And so it is, I think it is the most, to me, it's the most valuable program I would have ever attended if I were the one attending. It really, we just say and do things that are totally different than what any other workshop does. And I've watched the people that have gone through the program take the ideas home and really do amazing things in their practices.
Right. I mean, and if this conversation doesn't sort of clue people into that, then I don't know what will. Right,
because, and there's drinking afterwards. So.
Oh, that's reason enough to go.
Right.
Where can people, if people want to sort of learn more about that, where do they go? Where would
just
they go?
Go to divorcediscourse.com. You'll see a little button up at the top about the workshops.
Okay, all right, fantastic. I clicked on the button and looked through it, and it looks great. Okay, next lightning round question. You can recommend one book to to those listening. What is it?
There is a book put out by something called the Arbinger Institute called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it is a short story, very quick book that will give you fascinating insights into yourself and what it is that is holding you back. And it's a one evening, it's a skip 2 hours of TV, read this book sort of thing. And I'd love to hear what you think of it if you decide to give it a read.
Oh, I will. I'll order it today and read it, especially if we can get done with it that fast. I read. Part of my morning routine is reading every morning a little bit, so I can bust through these books relatively quickly. And I love, we have a lot in common, I think. I love learning about this stuff and talking about it and working within it, and so I can't get enough of sort of anything related to the business of running a law firm. I love it. Okay, well, tell us one habit that has helped you achieve success.
Persistence. I just keep doing things, and if you keep doing them, eventually something will work out. I know so many lawyers that start practices and quit or switch or take a job or whatever it is. I started my practice in 1990. And I'm still doing it. And I started this blog, Divorce Discourse. I've written about 1,600 posts. I started about 8 years ago. And it took 5 years before the ABA said, okay, you're one of the top 100 blogs. Persistence is the key. You don't have to be great at anything. You just have to stick with it.
And I think that also applies too with your networking advice.
Absolutely.
That is that is one of those long-term plays that will pay off for you in both money and just in happiness, because like you said, you will create really great relationships that become more than just professional. But you do have to work at it over time,
Yep.
Okay. What is the one question that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
I think you've done an awfully good job of wandering into, we've sort of bumped into a lot of different issues. I think the question that you probably didn't ask that I would ask, already knowing me, so I already know the answer,
sure,
is would you do it over again? And I think the choice you have for a lot of lawyers is start your own business or just go work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And where I've seen the answer to that come to me is watching my two kids, two very different kids, one of whom probably does need to work for himself, and one of whom will be a much happier person not working for anybody else. And I think in our culture of lawyers, there's this value judgment that says working for yourself or being an owner in a law firm is a really good thing, and that's what you should strive for. And I think you could be a really happy person not owning a law firm, and that owning a law firm is not everything that a lot of people imagine. It's incredibly difficult, incredibly stressful. You ride these waves emotionally of up and down. Mm-hmm. Yes, you might make a lot of money, but you might also go through a year or two where you literally make no money, or you're writing checks for $1 million, every quarter or whatever. So yeah, I don't know the answer for me, but I can sure see that there are two sides to this coin, and that the idea that you ought to go rush out and do your own thing may not be the right choice for a lot of people, because I think we fantasize that it's one way, and in fact, it's a very different way.
Right. I think that's, that's a great question and a great answer, because I think it is true, and it's something that even in our writings, we tend to sort of romanticize owning a law firm, and there are definitely some difficult things that you have to work through to get to where you want to go.
Yeah. A lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of financial stress.
Yes.
It's not all rainbows and sunshine.
Right, definitely. Okay, all right, and then the last thing, just to wrap it up, one parting piece of advice that you have, and then how people can find you.
Stop being afraid. I think so much of we have dreams, there are things we want to do, we have these goals and these visions of our future, and the thing that stops us is the fear. And it's shocking to me to talk to lawyers and to see that fear in their eyes, because these are the same people, the gladiators, who will go into a courtroom or go into some sort of room and do so well advocating on behalf of their client. But when it comes to their own lives, they let the fear hold them back. And you have got to do what you do with the rest of your life. In the rest of your life, you say, okay, I'm afraid, but it's part of the job. It's what I've got to do. When it comes to making your dreams come true, you've got to do the same thing. You've got to say, it's fear. It's normal. I see it. It's holding me back. It's the reason I'm procrastinating about this. It's the reason I'm not taking action on that. It's the reason that I can't make a decision about this other thing. Accept it, see it, and then decide to go ahead and do it anyway, because you're good at that. If you'll just decide in this element of your life to do it, you'll make it happen. So don't let it hold you back, because I feel like everybody I talk to, when we drill down, that's really the core question they're asking me is how do I deal with the fear? And how to get in touch with me? Best place is to go look for me at divorcediscourse.com. The contact information is right there on the homepage. You even have my direct telephone number, so you can email me, call me, whatever. I'm always here.
Okay, great. And there will be links in the show notes to everything that we've talked about today, too. So that was great parting advice. And as we wrap up, I just want to thank you for your time. Tell you I really, appreciate your honesty, appreciate your valuable insight. You are what I call the one percenters, the people that not only have built a successful firm, but have sort of done it your way. And I really do appreciate your time, and I would love to have you back on the show again sometime, maybe in a few months, 6 months or so, just to see what's next for you. Talk about what's next for sort of law firm business in general, because there will, I'm sure, be something new to talk about. And again, just thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure to be with you, Christopher. I'll be happy to come back anytime. Thanks so much.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Lawyering podcast. For more great action-packed advice and information, visit theartoflawyering.com.